Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome again to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Today, Monday, November 30th, for all of those of you who just couldn't figure out the day today, I appreciate anybody who's tuning in. It's 10 o'clock p.m. here, Calgary time, and I'm really happy to be back here again. I did a broadcast yesterday morning at 10 o'clock a.m., and we're happy to have anyone who's listening join me again this evening. And if anyone on the East Coast is listening, I think you're all crazy and you should go to bed. And but if you want to catch my show, that's just wonderful. I have lots of friends on the East Coast, and I love you all very much. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I have all kinds of interesting things to talk about. I did quite a lot of research today, and as I'm working on a report for my class in International Community Development, and the last few shows that I've had I thought have been quite good. I'm going to try to come up with interesting things for everyone, and anyone who would like to offer some information, like if there's a topic that you'd like to discuss, or maybe there's you'd like to share your story. We're talking about child abuse prevention and human rights. That's what the show is all about, and it's really up to us. It's up to you. It's up to me to raise our voices and to take a stand against what we see on this planet that we just don't like. There's so many people, including myself, until a couple of years ago, like I had mentioned before, that just, it just doesn't affect their daily life. They might see stuff on TV or see things in the newspaper that they don't like, but they think, well, somebody else is taking care of that, and I don't have to really get involved in that. And that's, I'll support those guys. But really, it's going to take all of our voices to make change regarding child rights and human rights. And I'm a really big supporter of all human rights, including men, women, and children, but especially child rights, because my story is, I've got a couple of blogs out there on Blogger, and one is my personal story, Not So Fond Memories, and the other one is for school, and that is Promote Positive Change for Human Rights Abuses. And I also have a YouTube channel devoted to human rights, and I'm just getting started, actually. This is just the beginning, and I'm just so happy to be able to share my experiences, and I'm happy to be able to share with people what I've learned just over, in my lifetime and over the last couple of years studying for international community development and all the issues that go along with it. So this show is, if you'd like to phone in, my guest call-in number is area code 917-889-3736, and you're welcome to call in with any kind of questions you might have, any information that you might have that you just want to share and you think is really vital for people, or even just something that's interesting that you thought was interesting regarding child rights or human rights abuses. Or all around the world. I'm really actually very interested in all human rights everywhere. So I'm very interested in Afghanistan right now because I see the need there, but there's a need all around the world, and everywhere you look. Like, I study the whole world's human rights affairs, and it's so huge that we can't begin to even just scratch the surface, But there's some people that are doing some awesome work, and I hope to be able to. I'm going to share some stories with you today. I'm going to actually share some information today about a few of these people who are doing some great work. And I also saw something in the news that was kind of interesting. It was a tidbit that I thought I might just report on here. I actually saw this. Where did I get this? This was the Canadian Press on the internet. The Canadian Press. There's a report there, Monday, November 30th. It's I'll just quote the whole thing. Little Rock, Arkansas, used a stun gun on an unruly 10-year-old girl. That's quote unquote, and has been fired for violating department policy. And this person wasn't fired for using the taser on the 10-year-old girl who was acting unruly. It was because they didn't turn the camera on while they were using it. And I thought, well, why would you need to stun gun a 10-year-old girl unless she's, to save your own life, or maybe to save her life? Otherwise, it just makes no sense to me. You can't go around tasing kids. So anyway, this is the whole issue. This is the thing. Kids, they get out of control. They misbehave. We all know this. I'm not a parent. I've never had any children, but I was a child, and I know, what it's like to live with a parent or two parents who have no tolerance for abuse, and really there was no effective way of discipline in our home. So when we were growing up, if you got out of line, you just never knew what kind of punishment you were going to get. You might not get any, and it might be for something completely that you think you should be getting some punishment for, or you might be punished extremely horribly violent for something that was just something that just needed a scolding, or maybe some privileges taken away, or some time out in a corner. So that's issues that we can talk about. I'd sure like to hear stories, survivor stories. You can phone the guest call-in number, area code 917-889-3736. And I also have a chat room here on, if you register on blogtalk.com, you can register for free as a listener, and you can listen to all this wonderful information that's on here. And there's so many thousands of shows every day from people around the world, just like me, and mostly North America probably, but around the world who are who have something to say. And I found some really interesting stuff on here that I tune into, and I'm really appreciating very much. And so if you register as a listener, you can get in and you can actually send chats, and it's cheaper because if you have the internet, the chat room is obviously the cheaper alternative. So you can send me a chat. But if you do phone or send me a chat, make sure that you let me know if it's something you don't want discussed on the air. If you want to keep it private between you and me, please make sure that you let me know that right away, so that I don't read it out on the air. Because otherwise I'll think that you've sent it in wanting to share it with the listeners. And so if you want it to be private, make sure you let me know. So anyway, that was just some interesting stuff that I saw in the news there today. I also wanted to sort of just go through a few of the things that we were talking about on yesterday's show, and that was regarding child abuse information. I actually didn't get to read that. I found some great information on the websites. Just looking around, really, it didn't take that long to find it. There's a Public Health Agency of Canada at www.publichealth.gc.ca, and they have great information on there. This is all really a great article on their website about abuse prevention. So there is primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention, I'll just read this out. This is off their website, www.publichealth.gc.ca, and it's Child Abuse Prevention Resources on the Public Health Agency of Canada. And primary prevention activities tend to be directed at the general public to prevent abuse or violence before it begins. And public awareness and education campaigns aimed at reducing or eliminating violence in society or within the family are examples. Others include family support and parent education activities, school programs, and professional development initiatives. So that's the primary prevention, is just a public, like what I'm doing, or what so many others are doing, raising their voices and just making people aware in schools, especially where the children are and the parents. That's the best place really for teachers to be on the lookout for abuse and for signs of abuse. And secondary prevention involves educating and supporting at-risk populations to give parents, children, and others the knowledge and tools needed to help ward off the occurrence of abuse. So, for example, families living in isolated regions, or those living in economically poor conditions, single-parent families, families who have previously come to the attention of child welfare authorities, and these would be the types of people who would benefit from this secondary prevention knowledge, which would be to educate them and just supporting at-risk populations just to help them out with information. Our research to gain further knowledge of child abuse and child abuse prevention would also be categorized as secondary prevention. So, and tertiary prevention refers to activities that support and educate individuals and families in which abuse or neglect has already occurred. The aim of tertiary prevention is to prevent reoccurrence of abuse within the family and within society as a whole. And many of these types of activities are undertaken through social service, child welfare, and other community agencies. While tertiary prevention activities are vital for healing of abuse victims and the prevention of further abuse, given that the federal government does not directly fund services, the focus of this document is on primary and secondary prevention resources that were developed with the support of the Federal Family Violence Initiative. So this is off of the Canadian Public Health website, and I just pulled it up. There was a whole bunch of information on there on what is abuse, what is child abuse, and they did. I'll read that as well. I'm reading right directly from their website, so I'm just quoting their material. This is not my material. It's the Public Health Agency of Canada at www.publichealth.qc.ca. If you suspect someone is abusing their child, or if you suspect that a child is being abused just by what you notice about this child, make sure that you get help, and make sure that you definitely question it, because too many times people think, oh, well, it's not my business, or it's not my place, or maybe we shouldn't get involved, and that sort of thing. People are very good at not getting involved, and I know I was, one of them 2 years ago when I saw that program on TV, and I thought, what am I doing just sitting here? I don't like why am I not raising my voice? Why am I not saying anything? And especially growing up the way that I did. So, it made complete sense to get involved. And so I hope that you will too. And anyone who's out there who's a survivor, if you're interested in sharing your story, please do. I'm actually reading my blog out on this my blog, my story, Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. I'm actually reading that out on this program, and just sort of chapter by chapter, and discussing it, because I think it's really important just to learn from other people how they, what they did to actually try to overcome and to walk away victorious from something like that. And I know there's so many stories out there who, my story just kind of makes my story look kind of silly, because I know there's people out there who have been through so much more, and you just have to hang in there, and you just have to stay with it and stay strong and make a decision that Well, hello everyone. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's my side on my computer said that I was dropped. So whether I was dropped or not, we had a little brief intermission there, and I had to get after my dad because he's out doing dishes and making all kinds of noise while I'm trying to do my show. So he's actually scheduled for surgery in a few days, and so I don't want to be too hard on him, but I just finished telling him I was actually going to be busy doing this. So anyway, back to some really important information. It's important to me, and I certainly hope that you're getting something out of this, and I really hope that you will join me in this fight to stop child abuse and to stop human rights abuses. I just wanted to talk briefly about, actually I'm going to go into something tonight that I really wanted to talk about because it's so important. I'm not sure if I know that there's lots of people out there who probably have heard of Betty McConey, but just in case you haven't, she's a women's rights and child rights advocate. She's a founder of Girl Child Network. She out of Zimbabwe. She has been around for a while. She's been doing some great work and helped tens of thousands of girls in Zimbabwe. And her name is Betty McConey, MAKONI. And she just recently, actually November 21st, won the CNN award, Hero Award, and I just went and saw that on the web. I actually missed that show, and I'm so excited. I saw this, and she was here in Calgary, and I missed her show. And I just wanted to sort of just give a little bit of information about what she does. And she received the 2008 Amnesty International USA the Janetta Sagan Award, and she's won now the CNN Heroes Award for her Girl Child Network and in Zimbabwe. And so I really recommend you taking a look at her website, www.girlchildnetwork.org, and there's also www.girlchildnetworkworldwide.org. That's Betty McConey, and you really should check her story out. She is a survivor who has just moved into a position to help people and help survivors and help these girls, and she's in my heart, and I just love her, and I just wish her all the best, because she's doing, she's out there making it happen. She's making a difference, and it just makes me so happy to see somebody doing this. She's because these girls' lives are being completely transformed, and I'm just going to quote what she said on this website. She said, quote unquote, "We are transforming victims into survivors, survivors into leaders. We help girls stand on their own feet and fight back against violence and exploitation." And unquote. So that's her quote, transforming victims into survivors, survivors into leaders, and that's what she's doing. She's a former school teacher. She founded Girl Child Network, which helps tens of thousands of girls in Zimbabwe, and I'm kind of reading from this paragraph here off the website, off of the girlchildnetwork.org, and also her biography. And former school teacher, she founded the organization, helps tens of thousands of girls in Zimbabwe fight against sexual exploitation, poverty, violence, through a supportive network of school-based clubs that empower girls to stay in school and resist attitudes that condone abuse of women and girls. So she is really making it happen. She's doing the work, and I just commend her for that. So yeah, if anyone's interested in phoning in with if you have any kind of questions for me, or if you'd like to tell your story, or just bring up an interesting topic, please do. My area code here for my guest call-in number is area code 917. And the guest call-in number 889-3736. And I hope you're getting something out of this. I certainly am. It's just so awesome to be able to share this information with you. I wanted to go ahead and read a little bit. I'm going to read my story. I'm going to read the prologue and chapter 1 of my not-so-fond memories growing up in an abusive home. And just to give you an idea of what I went through as a child, and in my own voice, and then we can I can discuss it with you, just to give you a little background information. So I'm just going to start with the prologue, written by Lori Ann Smith. Prologue: This is my story. Some names have been changed until I can reach the persons and obtain their permission to use them in this story. All events are as factual as can be. The contents of this story are in no way a complete history, as I am merely presenting facts that represent the clear meaning and motivation for writing this story. If anyone wishes to know more, that is, if anyone finds my story interesting enough to care to look a bit deeper, by all means, please contact me with your questions. Some of the content is graphic, although I did not go into details when mentioning marital rape and molestation. Perhaps I might, if absolutely necessary, shed some light on what I saw and what I went through myself regarding sexual abuse. I did not change the language to suit a younger audience, as I really want the truth to be brought to light. I was actually toning it down in most instances, as my mother had a whole vocabulary that would make any sailor blush. I had made it a point to not forget what had happened to me, as I made it a point to not forget the pain my entire family suffered due to ignorance. A lack of education and the cycle of abuse and poverty that repeats itself had been passed on to my parents, who did not break the cycle, but instead perpetuated it. My sister Kathy and I have both agreed that we broke the cycle. She has one daughter. I have no children. It is my hope that someday this compilation of chapters in my life will be made into a book and published as a ray of hope to those who are still in the dark, searching for the light. Chapter 1. How many fingers am I holding up? No, 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 I cried in 3 quick successions, and in a defensive block with my arms tried to ward off the blows. A familiar voice spoke loudly, and my eyes opened to see a hand in front of my face, and the voice asking, "How many fingers am I holding up?" I looked, but did not see any fingers, just the whole hand, a bit blurry, fuzzy looking, and I had to look again. 3? Good, she said. Go back to sleep now. And this would repeat itself through the night. Always a different question. What day is it? What is your name? How old are you? And each time I would drift off into a fitful sleep and dream the nightmare again. The next morning it would all make more sense, as I remembered that I had my head cracked by my mother again. This time was the worst, and I was so glad to be safe for the moment at my friend's house. They had been up all through the night, my friend and her mother, taking turns to watch over me while I slept and to wake me up every hour on the hour, just to be sure I was not going into a coma or shock from the beating I had taken at home that day. I did not recall why I went the way that it did. Sometimes I had a smart mouth. Sometimes I said things I should not have said, but this was just way over the top. It almost felt like it was planned, and that my mother had set the whole thing up, as she knew I did not like to eat a particular soup she would make, stewed tomatoes and milk, which the milk would curdle, and I just did not like the combination. I probably said something about it as she called me for lunch. The scene replayed in my mind as I explained to my friend Desiree what exactly had happened. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the soup and said something to my mother did not want to hear. Fists pounded the kitchen table as my mother stood up out of her chair. She was almost 6 feet tall, and she weighed about 260 pounds. Her ominous figure towered over me, and I knew this was not going to be good. I braced myself as the back of her hand caught me on my right cheek. My whole body went backwards to the left, including the chair, and I cried out in pain as my left temple caught the side of the clothes dryer that was situated right behind me. I was stunned, but I knew I better get out of the house or it was going to be a bad day for me. I started to run, and while I was moving around the table, my mother was cursing me like a banshee. "You GD piece of S. You know G rotten W. I'll take your GD head off," she screamed, and shoved the table into my side so that I was trapped. She reached me, and by this time I knew the routine. So I just tried to protect my head by curling up on my stomach to ward off some of the blows with my back. Crack, thud, thud was the sound the heavy homemade wooden rolling pin made as it hit my back, my shoulders, and caught the back of my head. My mother was in a rage at this point, beyond even knowing what she was doing. "You want some more?" she screamed, kicked my legs, and bent over, grabbing my hair and pulling me up. I was whimpering and saying no, that I did not want any more. And she screamed into my ear. I said, "Do you want some more?" I could feel the rolling pin hit my head again and again, and I was protecting my head as best as I could with my hands when a blow hit my hand, and I brought it down. Not my head. I said, "No, please." I cried and pleaded and cracked. The rolling pin connected with the back of my head, and I could feel the blood pour down my neck and curl around my ear onto my face and onto the floor. That was not the first time my mother had spilled my blood, but it would be the last time that she would ever beat me like that again. She grew tired, and in her exhaustion could only muster up some cussing. I got up and was headed out through the living room, only a few steps as the house was very small. She spun me around and spit in my face. "Get out, you effing S, you piece of S." I was crying, and I could feel the tears running from my eyes. I am sure I said something back to her, but I do not remember what it was, probably how much I hated her. She shoved me to the front door and slammed it behind me. I was dizzy and shaking and extremely pissed off. I went down the driveway and onto the street I grew up on and made my way down a few houses. I looked to see if my best friend Arlene's car was in the driveway, but she was working. She was a year older than me. I was halfway to 14 years old that summer. I walked down the block to my friend Desiree's house. She had moved there with her family the year before, and we had become good friends. Her parents were nice, and I could think of no other place to go. So that is the first chapter right there. And that's pretty much how it all, this blog is actually written from that point, 13 and a half years old, somewhere in there. I really wanted to write from that voice because that's where it all changed for me, with this family instilling love in my heart. And that's pretty much it. I was used to that type of behavior. I was used to being treated like that. By the time I was 14, I had seen and heard and been through a lot of violence, and it was not just violence toward me, but watching my parents being violent towards each other. My mother was actually, I didn't include this in my blog because I wanted to actually, I probably will include it at some point, but I wanted the reader of the blog to actually understand that my mom's behavior, a lot of it was brought on because she was driven absolutely crazy by my dad. So I didn't want to take away from the fact that, you know, she, like, she was actually quite abusive to him as well, and I did mention that they used to fight, and but both of them together. But I think I just didn't mention too much about it because I didn't want to take away at the time the fact that a lot of her problems directed towards me was her issue with my dad, and I think that was really almost the background, the backbone of her. Of the violence in the home was her anger towards my father, and it all spilled out, mostly on me and a little bit on the rest of the kids, but mostly on me. So yeah, that's what the beginning of it. And as we go through the chapters, when I read them, we can go over and talk a little bit about it. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to call in and or just send me a little chat or a message, or you can email me anytime. That's fine. And I just think it's so important to raise our voices. There's so many children out there there's so many kids out there who really need a hand. And I know myself, like I've just recently started thinking about getting involved, but there's so many people that do need a hand. There's so many people in crisis right now. And I'm telling you, if you're one of them, I've got some numbers for you. And I also have some fantastic websites, Dream Catchers for Abused Children. They're on the web. And there is Sandra Potter, Donna Cashier, they're child advocates, domestic violence advocates, Dream Catchers for Abused Children. There's so many great websites, and I went through quite a few of them yesterday. And you can just, if you want to, you can get that if you want to look at that show from yesterday, that'd be some good information for you. And I have for Calgary, for Alberta, I've got some distress services, phone numbers, child abuse hotline, 24 hours, 1-800-387-5437, and Children's Services Crisis Unit After Hours, 1-800-638-0715. And if you're a kid out there and you happen to be listening, Kids Help Phone, 1-800-668-6868, and Protection for Persons in Care, 1-888-357-9339, Calgary Women's Emergency Shelter, 403-234-7233. And let's see, this is an important one. Crisis and Suicide Helpline, Distress Center, get help. If you need help, get help. This is open 24 hours, 403-266-1605. I've got 1 minute remaining. I'd like to thank you all, anyone and everyone who's joined me to listen to this Blog Talk Radio show. And we're just going to get deeper and deeper into the issues of child abuse and human rights abuses. As I'm going to stay on the air as long as I can do it. I'll be on here like once or twice a week as long as I can do it. And I sure appreciate anyone who's tuning in, and I hope that you all stay safe. If you are hurting and you are a survivor and you have not, and you think that you might hurt yourself, please get help. If you're thinking about hurting someone else and you've been abusing your child, please get help. There's help for you, and there's help for all of us if we just reach out. If people aren't reaching up to you, then you need to reach out to them and make sure that you get the help that you need. And I can help. If I can help you in any way, I will. Please let me know by sending me an email or phoning in and just making it a private call or whatever. And I just hope that you stay safe and be well until next week. And I look forward to seeing you next week. I'll be back on next Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and that's going to be December, let's see, I don't have a calendar next to me, but my next show will be next Sunday, 10 a.m.